Hello everyone, my name is Holly Stickles, and today I'm going to present to you my research proposal for a new approach to investigating Massachusetts manufacturing skills gap. To start off, I would like to talk to you about the definition of a skills gap. In its simplest and most straightforward form, a skills gap is a perceived mismatch between the needs of employers for skilled talent and the skills possessed by the available workforce. Now, this is a common definition that many researchers have used in some variation. However, the contours and causes of the skills gap are very elusive. What I mean by this is that there are countless open-ended questions directly applicable to the skills gap and all that it entails. What specific types of skills are perceived to be missing, and for which types of jobs? How do we truly know that there are not enough workers with these skills? What is the root cause or causes with these perceived skill shortages? The open-ended questions are endless. That being said, even though there has been much research on this issue, there have not been any end-all be-all definitive findings, and there is certainly a need for more examination. In reviewing the skills gap literature and trying to narrow down my scope of research to a reasonable size, it was outstandingly obvious to me that the vast majority of research rooted its focus on the manufacturing industry. It makes perfect sense that this was the case for a couple of reasons. Manufacturing offers a number of compelling features as a subject of investigation. As a broad sector with substantial variation, it provides a productive test case for the exploration of skill demands and skill gaps. Additionally, although employers across all industries have been complaining about their hiring struggles, the manufacturing industry has been arguably the loudest voice. That being said, before we dig into some literature review and the birth of my proposal, I'm going to walk you through some background information on the manufacturing industry. As defined by the North American Industry Classification System, also known as NAICS codes, the manufacturing industry is comprised of establishments engaged in the mechanical, physical, or chemical transformation of materials, substances, or components into new products. Establishments in the manufacturing sector are often described as plants, factories, or mills, and characteristically use power-driven machines and materials handling equipment. However, establishments that transform materials or substances into new products by hand or in the worker's home, and those engaged in selling into the general public products made on the same premises from which they are sold, such as bakeries, candy stores, and custom tailors, may also be included in this sector. Manufacturing establishments may process materials or may contract with other establishments to process their materials for them. Both types of establishments are included in manufacturing. For a number of years now, the manufacturing industry has been drastically decreasing in size in terms of employment. Now, this decrease has been linked to various macroeconomic indicators, and I would like to make a note that it is a complex topic that, for the purposes of this presentation, I am not going to describe in depth. I would, however, like to talk about efficiency as a factor of this decreased employment. As technology advances, manufacturers have become more efficient. In other words, employers have been able to cut costs, especially employment costs, via new machinery, equipment, etc. And there is evidence to support this event. In the charts that I provided here, you can see that employee productivity has been on the rise since 1997. All the while, there have been drastic decreases in the number of people employed in the manufacturing nationwide. In fact, these differences become even more drastically larger as the years go on. The manufacturing industry in Massachusetts mirrors the national trends. As you can see, there has been a large decrease in establishments and employees. Meanwhile, there has been a considerable increase in shipment value per employee. You can see in the top chart here that the value of shipments has remained mostly constant over these years. Therefore, we can intuitively assume that these existing employers have found a way to cut employees and maintain value. In other words, they have become more efficient. How is it possible that employers aren't finding enough employees, yet there are so many unemployed people? And if manufacturing employers really needed skilled laborers, then why are they constantly downsizing? Well, these are the questions that some previous research initiatives have attempted to answer. Some people believe that the reason there is a skills gap, if there even is such a thing, is because no one wants to stay in the industry with poor job security. This idea is tempting, yet vocational and trade schools have not seen a decline in enrollment, which likely means that people are still interested in the industry. In fact, there has actually been a surge in enrollment to the point where many educational programs are beyond their full capacity. Okay, so now I would like to talk to you about the ways in which researchers have attempted to measure the skills gap. The most typical approach involves some comparison of the educational attainment required for the available jobs and the educational attainment that has been acquired by the available workforce. Another very similar approach is an assessment of comprehension levels. For example, what levels of reading, writing, and arithmetic skills do these jobs require, and what levels of these same skills do people in the workforce hold? Most, if not all, of the research initiatives that I have read up on utilize surveys, interviews, and focus groups as their primary tools for measurement. Osterman and Weaver 2014 conducted a random sample survey of 2,700 nationally represented manufacturing establishments of 10 employees or more. The sample was randomly selected on stratified basis from Dun & Bradstreet's database to reflect the frequency of different establishment sizes based on 2010 employment data from the Census Bureau's County Business Pattern Survey. The sample was also trimmed to exclude industry codes for the baking, quick printing, and publishing industries. This initiative focused on core employees, defined as the group of employees who were most central to the establishment's production. For example, manufacturing associates, fabricators, assemblers, production technicians, and process operators. The study found that these jobs typically called for just basic skill level and comprehension levels. And some employers, but not as many, claim that these jobs at their firms required some more extended skills. The study also revealed, shockingly, that within this sample, the vast majority of employers actually reported that they didn't have any vacancies and they had no problems currently with recruiting. The findings are comparable to other similar studies that have concluded that the skills gap is perhaps, which I thought was pretty funny, a zombie idea, an idea that should have been killed by data but refuses to die. This opinion may very well be true, but there is more research that needs to be conducted before we can land on this conclusion, which leads me to my research question. Are employers complaining about a skills gap, or is it really an experience gap? I am hypothesizing that the typical interpretation of the skills gap definition is not reflective of employer complaints. Rather than investigating educational attainment and competency levels, maybe researchers should have considered job experience, in other words, on-the-job skills acquired through practice, as a potential factor. Research studies on job experience as a skills gap is scarce, because it is not a typical approach of skill assessment. Nonetheless, more and more employers are requiring extended amounts of job experience of potential employees, and therefore deserves to be investigated. Furthermore, the manufacturing jobs are typically skilled trades that involve on-the-job practice. For my research design, I have decided to take a very similar approach to that of Osterman and Weaver in the MIT Pi Manufacturing Survey. What that means is I will be conducting a random sample survey selected on a stratified basis to be proportionally representative of Massachusetts manufacturing industry, based on the U.S. Census Bureau's County Business Pattern data for 2013. My source of manufacturing employers for the sample will be compiled from lists of employers from Manufacturing Collaborative Partnership databases, including MacWic, MassMEP, the Greater New Bedford Workforce Investment Board Manufacturing Database, and a few others that I have come across in my stages of research. Within my survey for this research proposal, I have decided that it is important to include some of the questions that Osterman and Weaver included in their 2014 study. For the purposes of comparison, it will be interesting to see if Massachusetts employers respond similarly regarding vacancies in recruiting. In their study, the majority of the firms that were selected for the survey responded that they had absolutely no problems recruiting new employees and that they had no vacancies at that time. So these facts were pretty surprising, and I think it would be interesting to see what type of feedback Massachusetts employers give with these same questions. Additionally, I think I will focus on core employees that Osterman and Weaver defined as the group of employees who are most central to the establishment's production. These will be based on CareerBuilder and ONET job descriptions, and I will take into consideration the job descriptions that Osterman and Weaver included in their study as well. Additionally, I will ask questions pertaining more to my research question within the survey, and that is what is the importance of job experience. So I will be asking how many years of related job experience is required to attain available positions and other related questions in terms of job experience and on-the-job skills that need to be acquired through practice. The majority of my data analysis for this research project will be conducted using SPSS. At this time, I envision using a few different functions of the software to help me with my research. First off being frequencies. I definitely envision myself using the frequency function to help me determine the number and percentages of responses for each question of my survey. I may also be using cross-tabulations and correlation function to help me with my research. I may consider examining relationships between variables such as manufacturing subsectors and required job experience. It could help me determine whether there is a correlation between certain manufacturing fields or jobs even and number of years required in job experience. Before beginning any research initiative, it is always important for the researcher to identify any potential limitations or challenges that one may come across during the process. So that being said, I here have identified a few different challenges and limitations that I see that I may encounter during my process. So first off, my research is based on a survey, and there's always a possibility that I could receive a low survey response rate. And whenever a survey is involved, there's always a possibility for that, so I can't deny that that could be a possible challenge that I come across. Another challenge that I see in conducting my research is the potential for bias. Again, because I'm using a survey, I'm going to try to design my survey in a way that will try to eliminate bias, but the problem with this is that many of the variables that I am trying to measure are subjective and left up to the interpretation a little bit of these employers. So there's always potential for bias. Another factor that, or a challenge that I may come across is the amount of resources and potentially the cost of research of this research initiative. It could take a lot of time to go through all this data and collect this data, even interviewing these manufacturing companies, even just the time it takes to compile a random sample. All of these things are costly, And so that's definitely a challenge that I may face in conducting this research, is a lack of resources to do so. And then finally, a limitation of my research is that I am solely analyzing the Massachusetts manufacturing industry. So I have to keep in mind that Massachusetts data may not be relevant to other populations, even just within the country. The Massachusetts manufacturing industry is likely not distributed the same way that the United States manufacturing industry is. The skills gap is a problem that has been widely discussed and has received a vast amount of attention. That being said, there are state-funded programs in place to solve this issue. The research that I'm proposing can help to guide policymakers in deciding which programs are actually worthwhile. The programs that are currently being implemented, such as on-the-job training, seem to be an attempt at addressing a lack of on-the-job skills and lack of job experience amongst workforce participants. To me, this signifies that Massachusetts workforce development officials and manufacturing employers have identified that this is the case and is a real issue. Yet, I have yet to find their supporting data. That being said, I am hoping that this research can help to guide policymakers and either supply supporting data for these state programs or put forth meaningful research to help them refocus their efforts.